Well, I spent a lot of time yesterday going over those last three things for the test. And with what you have been taught so far, I don't think it's possible for you to do them. All right, I think the only way that it's possible for you to do them is to add code, which we haven't talked about yet. All right, so I'm throwing those out. All right, I actually worked on them quite a bit. May not look like it, but I did. And let's see, I used this one. I just grabbed that one. And maybe you've had this happen with some of the queries that you've done in the past, but this was the number 2 with the employee ID, so you were supposed to have all this stuff on there. And I could get the employee ID, that was not a problem. I could get it to change, that's not a problem, but it gave me the same name for everybody. And even though it's got different loans for everybody. So I just said after a while, the hell with it. So, and when I started looking at this, using this stuff in more than one table, every example that they were showing me in either msdn.microsoft.com or out on I don't know, any place I looked, they had code. And I just said, finally I just said the heck with it. I am going to grade your queries, so I'm going to show you what I did for the queries. You can see, and I'll put them up here. If you want to copy them down, fine. If you don't, that's also fine. You're not hurting my feelings either way. But I'll put all of them up there, including the one that was put up there, or the 2 that are up there for extra credit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these 10, or these 7. These 2 were both optional. All right. So I'm going to take the other ones, numbers 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7, make them each worth 10 points. All right. And if you did these, you can get 5 points extra on each one if you did them. All right. But I will put the answers up there right now. I still have your tests. I haven't looked through them. Like I said, I spent a lot of time on this. All right. So I just want to take it from the top. If you've got these, great. But if you don't, at least you'll see what they are. I'll put them up there for a couple minutes. So the first one really, hopefully the first couple, shouldn't have provided a lot of problem for you. First 2 or 3. First one, write a query that lists each customer's loan amount, first name, and last name. Sort on the loan amount in descending order. So that one was right here. Okay. Now, you might say, why did you use distinct? It really probably didn't have to, because since this was randomized, I don't think there were probably 2 loans that had the exact same amount anyway. When you ask for a random number between 10,000, I think it was, and 100,000, which was, I screwed up. I wanted it to say between 10,000 and 10 million, but I didn't put enough zeros in there. But the point is, I don't think there were any numbers that were the same anyway. All right. But you wanted the loan amount, the customer's first name, the customer's last name. You were getting it from 3 different tables. The customer's table, 2 different tables. The customer's table and the loan details table. All right. Again, I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. So where the customer ID equal the loan details customer ID. All right, and I'll come right back to it, but just to show you, if I grab this, copy it in, go into the project here, right mouse click under tables, do an add new query, and paste. Again, that's the same one that I just showed you, and then run this. Well, there were 500 loans, and I'm getting 500. You can see they're going down in order as they were supposed to, and we have the first name and the last name. Does that make sense? Again, that's something that all of you should be able to do. So I'll leave that up there for a second, but like I said, you all should be able to do that one. I will expect that if we have another test, and on another test you are asked to do queries, fairly simplistic queries, that one wouldn't be beyond what anybody can do. All right? The only way that I could see those last three working if you didn't write code was I was going to have to write some really ugly looking subqueries. And I started to do that, and I was like, after a while, I was like, no, that's not exactly what I want. And I actually wrote a subquery that was 3 layers deep. So it was a query within a query within a query. Still didn't give me everything I wanted, but it gave me most everything. And I thought, there's no way. We haven't even done queries within queries within queries. So I couldn't have expected you to do that. All right. So that was number one. Again, the loan amount, the customer first name, the customer last name from these two tables. And you either had to do a where like I did it, or you had to say, you had to tell it to actually to join. All right. So the other way we could have written this, we could have said this. So instead of what we have right there, let's see if we can rewrite this. Maybe this is the way most of you did it. I don't know. So this is the way I did it. But if I come in here and paste that in, we should have also been able to say, let's see, from customer CU, join loan details LD on, I think that's the right syntax. If I'm wrong, we'll know real quick. Of course it is. Yeah, keyword join. Well, that probably would be better. Let's see. Yep. Looks like I'm getting the same thing here. 500. So again, the more new-fashioned way, for lack of better words, of doing it would have been like this. All right, and maybe that's the way that you did it. Whether you did it the new way or whether you did it the old way, I don't really care one way or the other. All right, the bottom line is, did you get the right answer? All right, so that was number one. Number two, which said in our test here, write a query that lists each category description and the total loan amount for each category. Well, when you're talking about the total loan amount, again, this is the kind of thing that should just click for you, okay? You're going to need to do a group by, and you're going to need to do a sum. That should make sense to everyone in here. And what I did was I went back. This is what it gives you. Just look up on the screen here for a second. I did this. That's what it gives you for an answer, okay? And that's what you'll see in a minute. But then I went back and I literally went into the calculator and I added all these, which gave me this. Then I just went back and said, just select sum of loan amounts, just to make sure I got the right answer. All right? One thing after a while, what happens, if it has not happened to you as of yet, is what should happen to you is you get so cynical when you start working with databases that even it's like, hey, that's right, don't worry about it. You worry about it anyway. All right? And I've said this kind of thing to you before, that, you know what, if it turns out that somehow something gets screwed up and you can literally prove that it's the software's fault, the people that you work for don't care, because you're the one using the software. So, they're not going to fire software. They may replace it, but they're not going to fire it. All right? And I'm telling you, because if something like that happens, you could be the one that gets fired. All right? Again, like I said, they don't care. I've had that happen before where I finally got to the point, and maybe I told you about this, I don't know, but when I worked for AT&T, I was working, it was not nearly as automated as it is right now. You had to fill out paper forms when you wanted to do anything, and you had to use a certain kind of coding convention to make changes in existing code, and I did, and I followed all the protocol, and I did everything right. And as I found out later, the code that I was working on was being used worldwide, and a person in England modified the code after I did and removed some of my code. All right, so broke my code. I got called in and I got reamed out by my bosses, and I showed them exactly what I did. All right, and they were able to contact these people from England, and they were able to prove that it wasn't my fault, it was his fault. All right, and not once, not an I'm sorry, not you were right, not a we were wrong. It's like it's been fixed. You know, and I was supposed to be happy about that. Pardon my French, but I was pissed off enough I almost quit. And I was going to tell them where they could stick it. I was really close. If I would have had another job at the time or another job offer, I probably would have done that. All right. Now, so what are we asking for? We want the category description. That's going to give us all of these. If we leave this off, if we leave off that line you see there in gray, then all you get are these. That's going to make it darn hard to figure out what goes with what, isn't it? So almost always when you're going to use an aggregate function like this, and you're going to use a group by with it, you should include the field that you're grouping by. Does that make sense? All right. So again, if I do take this whole query, and I paste it into here, and I run it, again, as you can see, those are the totals that I get. All right. And as I mentioned, I went back and added them up by hand, and then I went in and ran the thing itself. So let's see, if we grab this one, we should be able to again say loan amount from this inner join on, again, I always get screwed up with the syntax. Okay, on. So that's the other way that you could have done it. All right, if you look up on the screen there. So just so you can see them sort of back to back, I'm not going to be able to show all of them together, but I'm going to cut the size of this one way down. So there's the two syntaxes between the two. I think the way that I do it is easier. You may not agree with that. All right. But it is the same thing. You get the same results doing it both ways. So it really and truly, in the end, doesn't matter. The reason that this one is suggested, the newer way of doing it, all right, is that was literally written for SQL. It wasn't, for lack of better words, kind of copied over from another language. And internally, this is supposed to run faster than this is. When you've got the number of records we have, hell, if you had 50,000 records, even maybe 500,000 records, it may take part of a second longer to do it the way I've done it as opposed to the other way. Now, when you start talking in the millions, there's going to be a few seconds worth of difference, which may not sound like a lot, but if you're working with a real-time sensitive type of an application, it can be very important. All right, let's grab this. So now let's see, I've got... Yeah, that's fine. I can always go back and redo them. All right, so that's the second one. Number 3. Write a query that lists the largest loan. Well, you can tell already you're going to be using max, min, and average in these, right? Hopefully that made sense to you. You're going to be using those aggregate queries. Use aliases to give each value an appropriate name. So since I'm making these worth 10, if you didn't use aliases, you're going to lose at least a point or two on each one. All right? So again, with that one, Now, you weren't told to do this, but it just made sense to me to round that to 2 decimal places. All right? But again, max loan amount, min loan amount, and average loan amount. Are there any questions on what is happening there? So again, that one, we're grabbing it all from the same table. So you'll notice if I grab that one, bring it in here, and run it. Okay? Biggest loan, smallest loan, and average loan. All right? What I have been told when I asked about this to people who know a hell of a lot more about it than I do, you'll notice I rounded that to 2 decimal places, but it doesn't look like it is. It literally is 2 decimal places. Even though it's displaying it as like 6, it is 2 decimal places. All right? So that was the first 3. Any questions on number 1, or number 2, or number 3?
When you do an inner join,
Yes.
if you're doing 3 tables,
Yes.
do you do 2 inner joins? Or
Yes.
Okay.
You always have one less join statement than the number of tables you're joining together. And one thing we talked a little bit about last semester, but not really in a lot of depth. It's possible to have what's called a self-join when you're joining a table on itself. Sometimes the only way that you can get the information is to join a table on itself. And the example that typically is given, and I don't have one up here, but the one that's typically given, is if you've got a list of employees and their supervisors, and you want to find out which employees don't have a supervisor, the easiest way to do that is with a self-join. All right, I'm going to come back to the other 2, but let's skip up to numbers 6 and 7. I will come back to the other ones. All right, this one I had you do thinking it would make it a lot easier for the ones that we were doing later. So write a query that displays the loan number, the loan amount, the loan years, and a calculated field called loan days, which is loan years times 306.25. The 365.25 was to account for leap years, and rounding it to 0 decimal places. Does it make sense? Everybody just looking up on the screen there. There's only one table. There's no joins that you have to do here. All right? So that's it. The loan number, the loan amount, the loan years, and then the loan years. I don't even remember if it asked you to do the years or not, but I thought it would make sense to see the years and then the number of days. All right. So if we take a look at that one and we run that one, and I had you do it by loan amount, so this was staggered a little bit. But you notice 10 years, always the same number. 30 years, always the same number. 20 years will always be the same number. Okay? And you'll notice all of them have 2 decimal places, but they all say 0.00. All right? So again, that is, I think, the only way of writing that one. I don't know, maybe you wrote yours and you wrote it a little bit differently. I don't know. Again, I look at the answers that I get, and then I look at the way you did it. And believe it or not, it may or may not seem that way. I always go back and try to sit there and say, okay, yeah, I guess you could have looked at it that way. All right, and try to give you some points.
You don't need the inside pairings, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, I have always been called a parenthesis fairy.
Right.
Because I have too many. You really don't need this inside set right here, if that's what you're talking about. No, you don't. I like there to be no doubt. That's all. If you did it like that and didn't put in 2 sets, that's not a problem. All right? So any questions on this one? All right, a couple of you look like you're still keying it in, which again is fine.
I have one question. So you don't have to put the identifiers in the front if you're only
No.
using one table, right?
No,
Okay.
you could have made a case here and said that that's harder to read with the way that I did it. I wouldn't even argue with you on that one. All right, I'm just used to doing it, that's all. Again, any questions? Everybody have that? All right, and number 7. This was meant to make you think because you had, I think, join all the tables together on this one. So write a query that displays in this order. So from the customer table, you're going to grab customer first name, customer last name, and customer veteran status. From the categories table, you're going to grab category description. From the loan details table, you're going to grab loan amount, loan years, and from the employees table, you're going to grab the employee first name and the last name. Since you only want the customers who are veterans, not only are you going to have to join all 4 tables with 3 join statements, but you're also going to want to say, and the cust vet status equal 1. All right? And then sort them in category description in ascending order, followed by the loan amount in descending order, followed by the last name in ascending order. So again, like I said, that probably out of all of them, that's, for lack of better words, is sort of the ugliest one. You can see how I have to make it a lot smaller. Now, this isn't the question that Brady just asked, but if I really wanted to, I could have taken every one of these fields and put them on the same line. I could have taken every one of these fields and put them on the same line. All right, I could have taken my wheres and put all of them, in fact, all of this on the same line, and I could have put this all on one line. The problem is it would have been so wide, the only way you could have seen it is if it would have been 2 or 3 point font, which is why I broke it up the way that I did. All right? And I'll come right back to it, but let me go and paste it in here. Bless you. And again, you can make the case and say, wait, I just have a question here. Isn't it kind of redundant since you have 247 people, they're all vets, to actually list the vet status? Yes, it is. If I was actually doing this for a report, I'd keep it in there, but when I actually put the query in for the report, I'd take it out. Does that make sense? All right. I mean, not only does it not run better with it out, it runs slower with it in there because it's just more work that the system has to do. All right. But that said, even though it's more work that the system has to do, while you're testing something, and I tend to do this a lot, all right? If you remember last semester, because I usually clean them out, but when we were doing all the C# stuff last semester, you wouldn't believe the number of comments that I would have in there, print statements, etc., all over the place. All right? And yeah, that eventually slows the system down if you end up having tons of comments in there. It can slow it down. But especially while you're testing, all right, after a while, we were told to take, when I worked for AT&T, we were told to take, we literally, all the tests that we ran, we'd put them right into the code. And then once they worked, we'd comment them out. But after a while, we were told that we were supposed to take out those tests that we put in there. And I asked later, I asked the guy, I said, I guess it's because it was slowing everything down. They said, no, we were hacked. And it was showing a lot of information to people that we really didn't have to show. That if somebody wanted to, do people in here know what the concept of reverse engineering, what it is and what it means? Some heads are shaking yes, and some. But literally, if I get a software package from someone, and I'm able to get the source code, and I copy it and just change it to my stuff, that's against the law. But if I get not maybe the source code, but if I've got an executable file and I can take what someone else has done typically, and I can reverse engineer it. In other words, instead of going from the beginning to the end, I can go from the end to the beginning and I can prove I've done that. That's typically not against the law. All right? Which is one of the reasons that many software companies take the code that they write and make it convoluted, so that if somebody does, is able to kind of reverse engineer, it's like, what were they doing here? They do it like that on purpose. All right. So again, you'll notice we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fields from 1, 2, 3, 4 tables. Since we had 4 tables, we needed to join together all 4 tables. So we're this and this and this. So we need those 3 statements. Again, those would have been inner joins. If you say join instead of inner join, it defaults to an inner join. And all right, and it also defaults to what's called an equijoin, which means that you're checking for equality. Now, is there anything in that query that does not make sense to people? I'll leave it up there for a couple more minutes. But this, again, is the time for you to ask. Yes?
Do you need to put ascending, or is that just the default thing?
No, the ascending is the default.
Okay.
So you never need to put it in. It never hurts to put it in. All right? And, you asked the question before, which was a really good question on that last one when we were using the same table. There are people that I know that work in this field that even if it's a query on one table, they go and they basically put the name of the table. They don't even use aliases. They put the name of the table dot the name of the field, because they consider that to be the ultimate kind of documentation that you can do. All right? And that what they're saying then is, if it screws up, I did it wrong. Right? It's funny, I remember this, there's sort of a correlation here. I remember karaokeing once with a friend of mine, and I didn't feel that great. I really probably shouldn't have went out. And 2 or 3 times during one song that I do a lot, that's not that easy a song to do, my voice cracked. And it's more of a softer song, so he kind of laughed. And he said, you should have just had him turn it up, or you should have done a different song. I said, I don't mind doing that. All right? Because it kind of exposed me, where other songs, if they were so loud, the background music was so loud, that if I screwed up, it was harder to tell. All right? Well, what we're doing here is, basically I'm having you put yourself out there. And if you do type customers dot, or you alias it like this, here you had to. But you had to either say, but let's face it, here, look, going back again to what Brady talked about. Those 3 fields right there, all right, those 3 fields, they're specific to that table, correct? Since they're specific to that table, we didn't have to say CU or customers before any of them. This field is specific to that table. In fact, every field that's in here is specific to that table. So you would not have had to have prefaced that with any table name, with any of those, because every single name that's in there is unique. The only time you'd have to do that is if you're joining IDs together and you've got 2 tables where both fields in both tables have the name ID. Or if I've got first name, that's why I put in cust first name here and emp first name. All right, figuring that way you wouldn't even have to worry about doing that if you didn't want to. All right, then let's look at the other 2, the 2 that were both put in there and these were not required, okay? Write a query that lists the number of people with a loan less than the average loan. All right, this could have easily been done with 2 queries. You could have said select average loan amount from loan details. That would have given you an amount. Let's say $75,000. Then you could have said, select count of loan amounts where loan amount is less than $75,000. I didn't want you to do that. You shouldn't be writing two queries when you can do it with one. So there's not all that much to type. That's it. And remember, when you've got a subquery, which is what this is, since it's a query within a query, that one is done first. And the answer to that, the output from the subquery, is used as the input to the outer query. All right? That should make sense to you. So again, if that's 75,000, okay, then it's going to use that 75,000 in here. So it'll say, so give me the count of loan amounts where the loan amount is greater than whatever that is. All right. So if you look up on the screen, I'll come right back to it. But if I just had run this query, if that's all I had run was this query right here. All right. So if I did that and I brought that into here, if I just done this and then ran it, it would give me this amount, $54,627.81.20. All right, so that amount that you see right there, that amount, without the that amount is what we get from this. So yeah, you could have done that query and then come back and said select count from loan amount where loan amount is greater than, and we could have just plugged in that number. All right. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab this, go back to here, try to go back to there. All right. And then literally just plug in the number. $254. All right. Now let's go and actually plug in the query with the subquery in it. Again, I'm just doing that to double check. If it doesn't equal 254, if it would not, something's wrong with my query. $254. All right. That's the idea behind using a subquery. It is writing a query within a query. Sometimes, I mean, and there's no limit to these, just so you know. I've seen these, the biggest one I've written has been 4 levels deep. A query within a query within a query within a query. Usually when you're writing a lot of those, what that's showing you is you got a flaw in your design. All right? You're making it much harder for people to dig out information than it should be. All right, any questions on that one? All right, then the last one that was on here. Write a query that, or was that the one we just did? Oh, one was greater than and one was less than, right? So it was pretty much the same thing. So in other words, the next one is the same query. All you have to do is change the greater than to a less than. So it's the exact same query. And what did we just say? There were 254 people that had something greater than the average, correct? Now, if no one had the loan right on the average amount, then there should be 246 when we run this one. I'm not that smart, but I know 500 minus 254 equals 246. All right? So if I grab this one, paste it in, run it. And lo and behold, 246. All right. So I did sit and think about this, and I thought, okay, I need to make sure that people are understanding the information in Chapter 13. All right? I need to do that before we go on. All right? I wrote a test where it was virtually impossible for you to show me whether or not you understood that information or you didn't understand that information. All right? So, what did I decide to do? Well, if you've got your book with you, if you don't, then you don't. But if you do have your book with you, you can turn to page 483. And if you don't have it with you, I'll bring it up on the screen here on page 483. I'm going to give you the starter file for this right now, and I'm going to ask that you do this assignment or this thing on pages 483 and 484. There's 12 steps. All right? In fact, I think it's on one of these two. I think it's on this one. So there's the starter file right there. And just in case this happens again, you might as well also take the starter file for Chapter 14. All right, and if you weren't here the other day, on Friday when the lady was here from St. Charles, when Ms. Zika came, that's the St. Charles stuff is on here too. The other stuff I don't think you'd really want there. If you want to see pictures of my daughter or my granddaughter, you could copy those, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. So grab the Chapter 13 one and the Chapter 14 one. And what I'll do is 121, I'm going to ask at 3:30. If everybody's got it turned in by then, if you all say, when you're done, just let me know it's done. That's all. Send me an email, say I'm finished. All right? But I'm going to give you some time to work on it. Up to 2 hours. Hopefully you won't need any more time than that. All right? This is actually, should be an easier exercise than the one we did in class. All right? And I'm going to make it worth 50 points so that hopefully you can get those 50 points. So if you didn't do well on the queries, you can pick up some points here.